Hi, I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where a husband and wife team go over all the characters, story, backgrounds, and worlds of video games that we love, because that's what we like to do together. We lore together.
Yes. And this is episode 28. We made it past a full year already.
Woo! So, just in case you hear them, our little buddy's in the background.
Yes. Also, because our little buddy is here, in my daily life specifically right now, because you go to work and I stay home with him,
Yeah.
all my notes and stuff are not on a computer screen because it's hard to type with him. So
You may
hear
some
paper.
You might hear a shuffling of notes as if we're Walter Cronkite about to report the news. Yes.
So apologies if those come through. It's going to be hard to kind of get all that out. If you would like to contact us to discuss lore or other things, you can do that on Twitter at Lore Together. On Instagram also at Lore Together. Mm-hmm. If you want to email us, you can do that. loretogether@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would like to support us, you can do that by going to patreon.com/loretogether to get per episode perks, as well as mini episodes and other fun stuff that we're planning on doing.
Yes, many episodes unfortunately were delayed because Safi got a new job and life got a little crazy.
Working on it, though.
Working on it, though. So, but if you would like me to not have to ever work again, make us rich at patreon.com/loretogether. And also, we are proud members of the Boss Rush Games network of podcasts. So Boss Rush Games has a lot of other fantastic podcasts that they either host on their own, which you can see live on Twitch, or listen to through all of them. And also we're part of their network of expanded podcasts. And we're happy to be part of the Boss Rush Games family.
Yep, this is episode 28. And you have no idea what this is, right?
I don't have any clue right now.
Let's see if you can guess this based off of these clues. I'm not going to go through the whole, here's the franchise. I'll tell you right now, it is a sci-fi franchise.
Okay.
You have heard of it.
Okay.
Started development in 1997 as an RTS.
What? Okay.
By mid-1998, it was a third-person shooter. This debuted in 1989 at Macworld, thanks to Steve Jobs liking the project.
Wow. Okay.
It had a slew of names internally. The first one was Monkey Nuts. The second one was Blam, because one of the developers didn't like saying the name Monkey Nuts to his mom.
Okay.
We have a bunch of other internal code names. The Santa Machine.
The Santa Machine.
Solipsis. The Crystal Palace. Hard Vacuum. Star Maker. Star Shield. A semifinal name was Covenant.
Quake?
No.
Okay.
Quake was earlier, actually. This is
Okay.
Halo.
Oh, there we go. This is going to be great because I've never played the story of Halo.
Coincidentally, I've only played the third game. And I don't remember much of it at all.
So that was years ago. We're showing our quote unquote age, but that was years ago.
Yeah.
And we played multiplayer with the crazy gravity off and hitting each other with the golf club special.
Split screen
unit.
on the Xbox 360.
Yes. So that's my exposure, just so everybody knows how I'm coming into this.
What do you know of the story, though?
So we have Master Chief is the main character. There is also an AI of a female identity, right? And
named Cortana.
Named Cortana.
We're not covering anything dealing with them at all.
There's alien subspecies and like the lower, it's got that classic thing where the lower level aliens you need to shoot are kind of comically.
The grunts.
Yeah.
We're not covering
idiotic.
any of that.
Okay. Also a Halo world where the inner.
We will not even get to the Halos.
Okay. Okay.
Or what they are or anything like that. We're going to talk about, and I found this the most interesting because I knew none of this.
Ah.
We're going to talk about the early timeline of humanity.
In the Halo universe.
Yes.
Okay.
How far back do you think the Halo timeline goes?
I would love for it to be 1492 when Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
And found a place that other people had already found.
I discovered this thing that has
People on it.
people on it. Because I'm the first person to discover this thing, even though these people were here, because these people don't count because they're not from where I'm from.
Well, even then, other Europeans had found it.
Yeah, that's the sad part. That's the sad part.
It's just he was a
specifically
Viking,
the islands,
not a.
Yeah, it was specifically the islands he was on, though.
I don't. Basically, he gets credit for something he didn't do.
Right.
So the history of humanity goes back beyond 1,100,000 BCE in the Halo universe.
Okay, there's going to be some conspiratorial stuff going on there.
Far back beyond that. At this time, humanity
Humanity.
doesn't even call it Earth, it is Erda or Erde Tyrene, and humanity is a spacefaring civilization.
Wait, huh? What? Huh? Wait. Are we pulling a Battlestar Galactica? Like, what is this?
I've never seen or anything about Battlestar Galactica, so I don't know.
Oh, do you want me to explain that?
I really don't care.
Okay, then I won't.
By 1.1 million BCE, humanity had already been established as a spacefaring society, establishing themselves across numerous worlds and expanding across the Orion Spur.
Okay.
On the margins of the galaxy we're at this point.
Okay, so we have a kind of an idea what that would mean because we know what the Orion...
The Orion Spur, for those who don't know, is a minor arm of our galaxy that is off of the major arm that we are attached to.
Okay, because I always, whenever you say Orion, I think of Orion's belt, which is actually part of a larger constellation of Orion.
This early history, unfortunately, was punctuated by a lot of dark ages, which left humanity scattered and with large gaps in their records, even losing that Earth was their birthplace. Like, that knowledge is lost to them at this point.
Okay, that reminds me of, if anybody has ever read the Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov, he writes of a civilization who has to theorize where humanity originated because they've forgotten where humanity originated. It's a very interesting take on an empire. So
yeah, there's a lot of time that's kind of lost in this timeline just because of these dark ages. We're going to pick back up actually at 150,000 years BCE.
That's kind of a big jump, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, humanity existing for as long as it has, and this is stuff that I couldn't find a lot of information for before, like how humanity got to become a spacefaring society to begin with.
Yeah.
So, recovering slowly from one of these dark ages, about 150,000 BCE, humanity claimed a precursor world of Charam Hakor and formed an alliance with the Sanshiyum to gain access to their advanced technology.
Oh, okay.
Precursors are extragalactic beings who explored many galaxies and seeded worlds. In fact, they seeded the galaxy. They're responsible for all these different races and stuff. It's kind of a part of an experiment of theirs. I couldn't find any information in my brief searches for what the experiment was. We will get back to the precursors in a future episode of Halo because there's just too much in Halo to cover.
Just so I'm understanding this correctly, the precursors are a civilization of spacefaring...
It's a race, yeah.
Okay, it's the spacefaring aliens, okay.
They are transsentient beings.
Transsentient, as in like they have a hive mind?
It's kind of hard to explain. Part of the problem with some of these races is that they become myth.
Okay.
Like they exist, but their abilities and all this stuff is also part of a mythology based off of their races that have discovered that they existed and stuff.
Well, kind of like what Egyptology was back in the Victorian era when we were first realizing what the previous Egyptian civilizations were. There was a mythos about everything in that era.
The other thing about the precursors is they're not tied to a physical form, apparently.
Oh.
They can kind of just change form at will. Generally, they're depicted as being kind of Lovecraftian.
Like if you see it, you literally just start bleeding out your eyes and ears?
More just like Eldritch Monster type look. It's not it's not like incomprehensible. It's just like tentacles and...
Something out of a Stephen Lynch nightmare or something like that. Okay.
Now, the Sanshiyum are a long-necked humanoid species. They have an extremely slow population growth with few fertility cycles per female.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Their fertility cycles are few and far between, which has made them more constrained in space because they don't need to expand. They don't have like a growing population to like, we need more worlds.
Right.
Humanity does.
Right, because we're rabbits.
Right.
Essentially.
Both humans and the Sanshiyum have these pets that they both have kind of adopted called the Pheru, Pheru.
Pheru, okay.
Yeah. During an exploration or a salvage mission or something, I can't remember what it was because my notes are incomplete because they're handwritten. They find these canisters of powder and they do extensive testing on all these powders, like what is all this stuff. Everything comes back fine except there's a strange thing that happens. The Pheru behave better.
Really?
When this powder is on them. It's basically a mild, I think they called it a psychotic, a mild psychotic that kind of like gives them a high, kind of mellows them out.
So it's essentially space catnip.
Yes. And they believed this for generations, like hundreds of generations of these Feru being sprinkled with this powder, being like, look, my pet behaves so much better.
And it's considered a pet. It's not considered...
It's a pet.
It's not a sentient enough being to be more than a domesticated creature.
Right.
Okay.
At least that's what I found. But after a couple hundred generations, a strange furry growth between their shoulders kind of coming up,
Oh.
which would cause other Feru to eat it for some reason.
What?
Yeah. Within a short time, these cute furry growths stopped being cute and furry and became like these long, strange, striped rods, tentacle things.
So, okay, I just want to get this image right in my head. So let's think about it, because let's kind of put it in terms of, say, exploring the unknown world. Say this was back in the day when you had a Victorian rich boy decide he wants to explore the quote-unquote unexplored Amazon. Mm-hmm. And so he goes and he sees this, or no, I'm going to say New Zealand. Let's say the quote-unquote unexplored New Zealand, which we know, once again, there were people there. Mm-hmm. And they find a kiwi bird. Mm-hmm. And the kiwi bird's really cute. And they're like, great.
These are pets now.
Then you find out that if you sprinkle a little, let's just say hemp on top of the kiwi, it's now a very pleasant kiwi. Okay, great. So we keep sprinkling hemp on the kiwi. The kiwi starts growing. First, it starts to bump, but then it becomes a tentacle out of the kiwi. So this has nothing to do with the terminology you used with the Feru, but I'm just trying to put it in terms where I can understand. Essentially, space kiwi, space adorable pets, suddenly started having tentacles. Is it literally tentacles growing out of it? Am I understanding that?
It's like a tentacle-like growth.
Okay. I think I understand now. I don't mean to sound obtuse about the whole situation. It's a bizarre situation.
Well, here's the Feru are, as far as I can remember, I believe they're herbivores and they're still eating each other.
Yeah. I mean, that happens sometimes, that a
not
herbivore
just because
has to get a weird protein fix from something.
Yeah, but not just because it has a growth on it.
No, that's not true. Though, great segue to the story about my hamster, where... So, before we lived together, when I had my apartment, I had a hamster. And Mystic was very kind to help me take care of this hamster. And before he moved in, the hamster had a growth on its side. So I took him to the vet, and the vet said, he's got a form of cancer. I predict he's only got... this was in October, and they basically said by the new year, he was going to be gone. And I was pretty sad about it because I'd only had him for about a year. I was hoping to have him for at least another year more, and that was not going to happen. So I was really upset. So... I was pretty sad, but I had a weekend where I ended up spending the night at my parents' place and going back to my place later. And Mystic, you had a key. So you and another friend were hanging out waiting for me to come back, and we were going to do some LAN gaming because that was the thing we did like every weekend or every other weekend.
This was before the COVID.
This was well before COVID. This was gosh.
This was about 10 years ago.
Yeah, this is a decade ago. So... our friend who was there said, hey, I'm sorry to hear about the hamster. And I said, yeah, let me bring him out so you could see him. And so I bring him out and I said, as you can see, and on the side of the hamster was no longer a bump or a growth, but there was a scab. And I was like, what just happened? And I called the vet, and the vet emergency line, the doctor called back, and basically they said, is there any blood in the cage? I was like, I think there might be some. Do you see any mass that's left? I'm like, no. And they said, well, these animals have been known to, remove their tumors if they see fit. And they were like, you sure there's no mass? I'm like, no. And they're like, yeah, and they will consume it too if they need to.
Ew.
And
Hope none of y'all are eating while we're listening.
Yeah. So my hamster got another 6 months out of it though, until finally it came back with a vengeance, and we had to put him down. But so. Feru are like hamsters.
So this condition, let's put it that way.
So they're calling it a condition, not an evolution, but a condition.
Right, because this eventually evolution wouldn't transfer to the humans and the Sanshiyun. So it does.
Oh, okay.
Not long after this, the infected of those races also begin to physically change, and they're combative. They fight, and they consume biomass and other resources.
Biomasses, and they murder. They're cannibals, or
they'll kill and eat everything.
Wow. So
yeah.
okay. Wow.
This is the origins of the Flood.
Explain to me what the Flood is.
I am going to. The Flood
Okay.
is a parasitic organism. It gets into a system. It spreads through anything that's left over from a body. Like if you kill someone with the Flood and like the arm is left, the arm is still contagious.
Okay.
It's a parasitic organism that basically takes over, makes you combative, and it just runs ramp through the whole system.
So kind of like a space version of toxoplasmosis, which...
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why everyone has cats.
Yeah.
Actually, that's unconfirmed, but...
Yeah. Actually, for those of you who don't know, though most people do know this fact now, toxoplasmosis it's a parasite, right?
I believe so.
Toxoplasmosis results from infection with a common parasite found in cat feces and contaminated food. The way that your cat can get toxoplasmosis is actually through a rodent who's infected, and that parasite essentially changes the behavior so that usually, I think it's mice and rats, but specifically mice who usually have an aversion to cat waste, specifically urine, are now attracted to it. So they hang out where cats are.
Right.
The cats will then eat the mice, and then the toxoplasmosis can continue its parasitic life cycle in the cat.
Parasites definitely do have that interesting way of doing things.
Yeah, similar to also the fungal growth zombie condition from The Last of Us, which I forget the formal name of what that's based on. So,
A series we will probably not be touching.
The Last of Us?
Well, in order for us to cover a series, you have to be able to play it, and we don't have any Sony consoles or any way of playing that game.
Oh, that's a fair point. I thought
Same
about
with God
that.
of War, same with...
Oh.
Yeah, so...
We'll have to figure that out. Hey, donate to the Patreon and we can get game systems.
That's true, yeah. We should have thought of that as a goal.
Yeah. All right. We're making new goals, guys. We're making new goals. All right. But anyway, so...
I'm not going to get into the nature of what the Flood really is in this episode.
Oh, so this is how it originated, but this is not really what it is?
This is how it became known. The powder already existed.
Which, is that suggesting some sort of intent from some other outside source?
There is an intent here.
Okay.
It's probably not at all what you're thinking.
Okay.
I will say it is partially a mistake.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
But I don't want to get too deep into the Flood because that would just be a whole nother layer to this. Mm-hmm. And even just focusing on the humans up until the point we're going to cover them was enough work.
Okay.
Well, taking care of Buddy.
So the Flood, though, is a significant part of the human history that takes place in the Halo universe.
The Flood is a major force within the universe. They are disgusting and creepy. And do you remember when you played Metroid Prime? There was like those parasitic organisms that were like swarming through the tubes and stuff after you and everything. I think I might have been running that part.
Yeah, exactly.
But it kind of feels like that, or the collector bases from Mass Effect 2.
Oh.
Where you have like I don't think they were this quite disgusting in Mass Effect 2, but the arrays of coffins, imagine those all being like pustules.
Okay.
And gore bags and
that
stuff.
kind of makes me think more of the Zerg.
Yeah, a little bit. Kind of can get a little bit of a feel for the Zerg in this.
Okay.
But now humans and the Sansayun have a fight on their hands. Mm-hmm. And the infestation is spreading. Whole planets are being lost.
Whoa.
And humanity, according to some, has started forcefully taking worlds from other species and replace their lost ones. Basically, they're annihilating the inhabitants of about 50 systems.
Whoa, that's a huge undertaking.
And allegedly replacing them with human colonies. Not exactly. This is actually the history according to a race called the Forerunners. The Forerunners, they are an empire that is greater in strength than humanity. And they are a long-lived race, thousands of years. They're bipedal.
Wow.
They lack pronounced noses or ears, so they look a little...
That you mean it's what a lot of people refer to as the gray aliens? Where...
Not quite. They have
Okay.
there's like two nostril slits, and they have slight bumps for where their ears would be.
Okay.
And they don't look quite like grays. They're taller than humans.
They don't have the big eyes?
Not quite, no. Their
Okay.
faces are slightly alien, but not to that extent.
Okay.
So the Forerunners have their empire called the Ecumen. Basically fight back, not knowing that the humans weren't conquering, but the humans are actually sterilizing the worlds.
Whoa.
Because the Flood is on those worlds.
So what the humans are trying to do is what they believe is the greater good. Essentially, we have to eradicate wherever the flood is, or else it will take over. And the
Right.
Acumen see that as a very convenient excuse to
Right.
dominate these worlds.
To them, the flood is not a threat. They're just like, this is a small time thing, or it's not a real thing. They think it's excused by the humans.
Now, is it ever discovered if the Acumen are immune or not immune to the
They are
flood?
not.
So they can be susceptible for the same thing. They technically would benefit, but it sounds like what happened was the humans stunk at diplomacy and had to explain what they were doing. Or
Yeah.
and they never did.
I am glossing over a lot of not extraneous detail, a lot of detail.
Mm-hmm.
There's named figures in this period of time.
Oh no, I would think, because you've got to have military generals who are leading the charge, and you have to have
Right.
diplomats and they're talking to each other, or politicians for or against the eradication of these planets, all of that stuff.
This war is not just one war. It is basically a group of wars called the Forerunner Human Wars.
Oh, okay.
So the war was over 1,000 years.
1,000 years?
1,000 years of wars.
That's generations completely never knowing what actual peacetime ever was.
Right. And humanity held its own on two fronts.
Wow. Okay.
Unfortunately, the Forerunners are much more advanced and just a larger, in general, empire than the humans are.
Okay.
They can just outmaneuver them at all points. And over the entire war, humanity never got within 15,000 light years of the Orion complex, which is the Forerunners' central power.
Okay.
Like, that's their main thing. Meanwhile, the Didact, which is the leader of the Forerunners, pushed using their more advanced nav and slip jump abilities to skip unnecessary systems and only hit critical systems.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So humanity was kind of at a disadvantage there, but still held their own against the Forerunners and the Flood. Eventually, the Flood just leave.
Really?
Why, I'm not going to get into now. There is a reason why they leave. The Forerunners believe that humanity has genetically figured out how to defeat the Flood
Okay.
and sacrificed like a third of their population to be like, you're all food for the Flood with your tampered genes that's going to kill them. That's not true.
So the Forerunners essentially are just constantly thinking the worst of humans and constantly have conspiracy theories to uphold those beliefs.
They see themselves as chosen guardians of the galaxy.
Chosen guardians of the galaxy.
They consider themselves to be the chosen ones of the precursors.
Okay.
So yeah, we're not getting into the precursors beyond what we already have. There is a lot more to them. In fact, at one point, humanity stumbles across a lone precursor.
Oh,
being.
interesting.
We're not going to get into that this time either.
Yeah, but for whatever reason in the Forerunners' history, they honestly think that they've been chosen.
Yeah, and they're the ones who kind of mythologized the precursors to be, transcendent and all this stuff. They were very powerful beings and very almost to the point of omnipotence. But, there's this level of what is real and what isn't with them.
This is reminding me. So there's a couple things this is reminding me of. This one is reminding me of one of the series I love, the Dragon Age Elven Pantheon,
Right.
where there is some truth, but there is also a good chunk of fiction in that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also reminds me of the Guardian race of warriors from No Man's Sky, who are called
the Vikeen.
The Vikeen, who I thought were Vikings. But yeah, except the difference is the Vikeen don't think they were chosen. It's more like the Vikeen have chosen to be guardians, so which is different than the Forerunners, who believe that it was gifted upon them.
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, so the Flood leave of their own accord, or for their own reasons, I should say. And humanity starts to finally be able to bring more people back to fight against the Forerunners, but it's too late now. They're completely outmatched at this point.
Okay.
And the Forerunners can just kind of pick off strategic points at this point, to the point that humanity, and I'm brushing over a couple hundred years here, are pushed back to Cherim Hakor and kind of have to hunker down and start working like precursor technology into their tech just to try to hold off stuff, and it's still not enough. Like eventually they still just lose. In fact, most of the humans and the Sen Shium commit suicide instead of being taken prisoner.
Is it that bad being taken by the Forerunners?
Here's the interesting thing. The Forerunners do something different now. Usually when they would win, your race is just kind of done.
They just exterminate you. Genocide.
But
Oh, something worse than genocide, I assume.
possibly, depends how you look at it, but they think that a third of humanity has genes that will stop the flood. In the meantime, the Forerunners have encountered the flood,
Right.
realized how bad it is, and just like bombarded planets.
So they end up adopting the same idea that the humans
Right.
have. The only difference is they did it, so it's better.
The humans didn't even say anything, they just kind of did it.
Okay.
In fact, the Forerunners saw it as an invasion.
So the humans didn't go to the Forerunners and say, "Hey, hello, first contact here. P.S."
Not first contact. They knew about I think they knew about them already because they were kind of skirting around Forerunner territory before then.
Okay. So they didn't think to go to, "Hey, Forerunners, fellow sentient human beings." Or no, not human beings, but fellow sentient
beings.
Fellow sentient beings, we have a shared threat. It is an infection. Please join us on this valiant
Right.
effort to fight it. This is the knowledge we have. And so instead of joining together that knowledge, the humans were just like, we have the right to bomb this because the safety of the galaxy.
Right. There's the flood that are retreated, who have retreated. The Foreigners are worried about them. We're not going to get into their solution this time because it doesn't matter for our story of humanity.
Yeah.
Our story of humanity almost ends here
Oh.
because the Forerunners, knowing that humanity is valuable because they have a third of their DNA is whatever, they have this belief that a third of their DNA is capable of destroying the flood, which isn't true, but it kind of helps humanity in this weird way. But what they do is basically they eradicate humanity for the most part and send all the survivors of humanity back to Earth.
Wow. So the Forerunners figured out Earth was the...
We had known Earth was, by the time the war started, we knew Earth was home again.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, Earth was one of the first places the Forerunners captured.
Wow. Which is symbolically devastating.
It was very devastating. It was a crushing moral defeat. Mm-hmm. But what they do is they basically forcibly devolve humans.
Excuse me, what? I didn't think that's how gene therapy worked. What?
It's not... Basically, they were pushing for genocide.
Yeah.
And there was a figure named the Librarian. I forget what her actual full name is. But she is
she has a title.
Yeah, she is a Forerunner who basically says, no, we need these. We need to preserve some life in the galaxy, blah, blah, blah. And she basically shepherds humanity after it's been forcibly de-evolved to kind of build, like, kind of planting seeds and making sure things progress along a certain way.
Okay.
It gets a little weird because at one point in the series, we'll touch on Master Chief here. He is said to be the culmination of like hundreds of thousands of years of development.
Okay.
Their like genes are selected to a point where you have the Spartan class. Spartans are actually a big thing. Like you will actually see references to battles that the Spartans took place in.
Really?
Like the Spartans, like in our history, like real history.
Yeah,
Like
no.
the Spartans, you will actually see references to battles that those Spartans were in. It's partially genetics, it's partially the librarian pulling strings and, you know, doing dictated development
So
and
it's
everything.
essentially weird historical designer baby
Right.
stuff. Everybody's a designer baby in this universe. Every human, I should say, is a designer baby.
Humanity as a whole, not individuals, but humanity as a whole is kind of like along a plotted path by the librarian.
That's sick. That's just a weird, gross overconfidence in your own intelligence to feel like you can choose
based
the
off-
direction of a sentient civilization like that.
The intentions are good. Mm-hmm. But that is my read of the information. Again, I haven't played past Halo 3 there, and I didn't play before Halo 3. So my personal view is kind of narrowed, and that was over a decade ago.
Right.
So my refreshing through the wiki, that is my understanding of the events. If I am wrong, I welcome anyone to email me and tell me.
At loretogether@gmail.com. That's the where you can reach us.
But that's kind of where we're leaving humanity. There is still obviously more.
So,
in fact,
is there any?
In
so
fact,
we're basically assuming that humans for millennia are going to be spacefaring for dozens of millennia, essentially, are going to be spacefaring species.
Yeah, and once they got forcibly devolved, more than one species of human appeared.
Okay.
And that's where I got a sticking point. I wasn't looking for that information, and I didn't remember to see how that rectifies to become the one species of humans now.
Okay.
But they have different names, they're different species entirely, but they're still humans.
Okay.
It gets weird. And Halo, more than most sci-fi franchises, I'd say, kind of has this layering of religion and mysticism on it.
Well, with something named like Halo, that actually isn't super surprising.
More because the main adversary, or at least one of the main adversaries in the games, is a religious hegemony.
Oh, okay.
That's the Covenant.
Okay.
So that's where kind of you get these kind of esoteric names for things and everything. So.
Oh, okay.
But that's kind of where I'm going to leave it for now.
So there was a lot of broad strokes of
That's a lot of broad strokes.
Eons of history.
Right.
Yikes.
And that's why I didn't want to go too much into the weeds, because I could go into what the flood is on even a microscopic level. We can talk about like what the flood actually is made from.
Oh, wow.
But that's getting into the weeds on other things. So
it sounds like a lot of people who aren't fans of Halo just think of it as, oh, that Master Chief shoot 'em up game.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like the people who created it really tried to create a very intriguing, in-depth universe so that you can enjoy it in a totality of not just the action part of it.
Here's the difference between this and, say, another first-person franchise like Unreal, which is another game I was going to try to do, and I still want to do it, but I've literally saw the people arguing about this. Somebody argued that who cares about the story? We just here to shoot bots.
And for some people, that is what it's all about. And I'm not going to say that's the wrong way to play.
I've seen people arguing for that for Halo 2. Who cares? It's just a multiplayer shooter. The difference is Unreal kind of is the precursor to Halo in a weird way.
Okay.
Because Unreal said Quake is just running around shooting stuff.
Okay.
Doom is just running around shooting stuff. We want to have a story. And they do an atmospheric story.
Okay.
You know, kind of like Half-Life. Same thing. We're going to do a story that's going to be first person.
Right.
Unreal's a bit more run and gun. Half-Life is a bit, slower paced.
Yeah, you're not even playing anybody who's supposed to be such an impressive person on the battlefield. They're a scientist.
Halo kind of takes it to another degree with the more movie approach. The more we're going to tell a cinematic story.
Ah, okay.
And the other thing is, a lot of stuff we talked about is mentioned in the games, but its detail comes from the comics and books and the films and
So this is another series where a lot of the extra information is actually in outside texts of the video game.
In fact, the 1.1 billion year figure comes from a book. It's not in a game.
Okay.
I forget what the book is. I think it starts with an S, but it's like Halo something. Yeah, it's...
Okay. Okay. Feel free to tweet at us if we forgot the name of half of the stuff that we're referencing. We have no shame in that whatsoever.
We have a young one who takes a lot of our mental energy at times.
You're hyper focused on that, Mystic. We'll have to schedule the research so that way I can handle it while you're doing your research. Wow, that is I can tell a huge overview. So we're just gonna have to come back to the Halo universe.
Yes,
that's just
very much
gonna
so.
have to happen.
We haven't even touched what the Halos are.
No, we haven't touched what the Halos
We're
are.
close. We got close to their creation.
Gotten to exactly what the flood is. We haven't gotten the history completely of the Forerunners or of the...
We haven't even gotten to the Covenant yet.
The Covenant or the... What were the allies of the humans? The
San Shium.
The Sanshyum.
SAN''SHYUUM.
So we don't know anything about the Sanshyum.
We do at this point.
But I mean in the sense of from what you were telling us
Right.
now, this is just
Yeah.
a general overview. So they're...
Specifically on humanity until they get forced de-evolved, basically.
Okay.
Because did you know that Halo had ancient prehistoric humans in space?
No, I didn't know we had cavemen in space.
They weren't even cavemen. That's the thing. Like, we're talking full society, full civilization. We're not talking like, oh, cavemen in space. We're talking like our history on Earth that we know in the real world is wrong.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that either. That's just, you threw a lot at me.
I always love introducing sci-fi universes because half the time they're complex for almost no reason sometimes.
Yeah, that was a lot to take in. Well, I guess thanks for getting on this crazy ride with us. I have no idea where we ended up. This is insane. And I guess we're going to, I honestly, I still say we have to come back because now.
Oh, we'll come back.
You've done so many broad strokes over so many topics in Halo that we have to now deep dive into.
But anyway,
All right.
That's where we're going to leave it for now.
Whoa. Well, thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. We will, I guess, reach out and we will catch you next time.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for listening.
All right. Bye.
Bye.